How did things move from a position where Theresa May was meant to travel to Dublin today to try and work out a deal and sort of try to further negotiate this Brexit deal, to a situation where that's cancelled? She's now having to fight for her political survival.
That's right. Well, many in her own party are not particularly happy with this draft Brexit deal that she's come back from Brussels with. And that's really where all this has started from. Overnight, 48 letters were submitted calling for a vote of no confidence. That's 15% of her party, and therefore that's the number that was needed in order to get this vote through. So later on tonight, we are expecting that vote to take place. She will, of course, need 158, half of the party, to vote for her to stay, or otherwise she could be ousted. And then we've got a leadership contest, of course, that would take place following that. As it stands, though, at the moment, Tulas, we've been hearing a lot of MPs come out supporting her, tweeting about it, openly saying that they are going to vote in her favour. But of course, it is a secret ballot, so we will not know the results until around about 11 p.m. South Africa time, whether, of course, she will remain in the seat of 10 Downing Street or whether she has been ousted by her own party.
Are any of the MPs that have been tweeting and talking about how they support her part of the government, part of the cabinet and ministers as such? Because understandably they would have to say that, and I guess linked to that question is, can we read anything into public statements that people make when we know that it's a secret ballot at the end of the day?
Well, the majority of her cabinet has come out supporting her, but as you said, it's quite likely that they're going to. It is a secret ballot, so anything could change when it comes to those ballot boxes. But of course, those cabinet members might be thinking about their own future as well, so dishonesty would not particularly play that well. But it is true, though, that Theresa May certainly does have quite a hard task ahead, and no doubt phones will be ringing off the hook all day today as she tries to persuade as many of her Conservative Party members as possible to vote in her favour. Now, there is some speculation as well that if she receives 80 votes against her, that is essentially half of the people on her payroll in the Conservative Party, and therefore she should step down even if she does win the majority vote, because half of the people on the payroll have voted against her. However, we have seen from Theresa May, she is someone that really likes to stick to her guns, and if she does win this contest, then it's very clear that in some respects, perhaps, that she may well stay in that seat and want to carry on. She sees it really as her duty to carry out Brexit. She believes that the best Brexit deal on the table is the one that she has brought back, and she really wants to see that through to the bitter end. To the extent where there are rumours circulating as well today that later on, before the vote, she will give a sort of speech to the 1922 committee. That's this important Conservative Party committee calling that have been tasked with carrying out the vote of no confidence. She has. There are some rumours circulating here in Westminster that what she may do during that speech is suggest that she won't be around for the next general election, but certainly that she wants to be here to carry out Brexit.
So let's talk about the other political players in all of this across the aisle. Natalie, I imagine that Jeremy Corbyn and the Labour caucus are pretty much enjoying this spectacle and hoping that it works in their favour. Talk to me about their, their say in all of this, but also, more importantly, the DUP, the other coalition partner in all of this.
Well, of course, this really plays into the hands to some extent of the Labour Party when the major opposition to them is seemingly in disarray, and it's likely to, of course, be a factor there. However, what we have heard from Jeremy Corbyn over the past few days is that the Labour Party, is not willing to call their own vote of no confidence against Prime Minister Theresa May. Yesterday, of course, they said it simply wasn't the time. But no doubt these divisions within the Conservative Party are, of course, likely to be something that he is able to play on in future when talking about a strong and stable government leading the country ahead, particularly when it comes to the very difficult issue of Brexit. But at the moment, no ambitions from the Labour Party to call for that vote of no confidence and try to overthrow Theresa May themselves. Of course, what might happen eventually is that all of this may end up in a general election, and perhaps then his Labour Party may well gain some ground. But at the moment, we are really just waiting to see whether Theresa May can stay in her seat in 10 Downing Street. And of course, if that does happen, it will be another 12 months before her own party can call for a vote of no confidence in her. So it's rather likely that she will then be the Prime Minister tasked with carrying out Brexit. We know that all-important date of the 29th of March, which is when the UK is scheduled to leave the European Union, unless something else might happen to derail her before that, which is more likely to be her stepping down herself, which, as we've heard, is something that she's not really willing to do.
Sure.
She very much wants to be the Prime Minister that takes on Brexit, seeing that as her duty to do so.
Let's face it, Natalie, it's all a mess, isn't it? I mean, the timelines, as you mentioned, the 29th of March, that date on which the UK is scheduled to leave the European Union is fast approaching, but also this vote that was cancelled at the 11th hour, the parliamentary vote earlier this week, is now scheduled for some time in January. To a certain extent, Theresa May makes some valid points there in saying that actually we don't have time for all of this.
That's right, and very much British politics is being seen as in a bit of chaos at the moment, I think it's fair to say, for all of the reasons that you have just listed. And I think Theresa May is using that to her advantage in some respects, and no doubt will be trying to persuade many of her ministers and MPs to vote in her favour by using that. Of course, we know that, or we can assume that if another leader is voted in of the Conservative Party and therefore another Prime Minister of Britain, it's likely that we will see an extension of this Article 50 of the Lisbon Treaty, which is the mechanism that gets Brexit going. And there does seem to be the appetite in the UK that a lot of people just want to get on with Brexit. They just want it done. And any further delays or potentially a complete stop of Brexit is going to enrage many people who voted for Brexit. But of course, then you've got the Remainers side. We know that vote on Brexit was pretty much split down the middle, and many of those really wanting some sort of finality to all of this. So it is likely that any general election or leadership battle that could come out of this is, of course, likely to cause delays to Brexit, with a lot of the country just wanting it to be done now.
And just for a sense, as a final question, Natalie, just for a sense of context, this all hinges around this deal, the latest deal that she had negotiated with Brussels, which was meant to be voted on earlier this week, but ended up being pulled at the last minute. And all of that has to do with the so-called issue of the backstop. That has to do with the issue of the border between Ireland and Northern Ireland.
That's right. This has been one of the biggest sticking points of the entire negotiations, really, is this Northern Ireland, Republic of Ireland issue. What are we going to do when Brexit happens? And everybody has agreed that they don't want to see a hard border between those two countries. In order to avoid that, what has been agreed on is this backstop, which would potentially take place if the EU and UK weren't able to agree to a trading relationship by 21 months after Brexit. That's this transition period that we hear them talking about. If they are unable to agree to a future relationship, then this backstop would kick in. And what it would mean is that the UK and Northern Ireland would remain in the EU's customs union. A lot of Brexiteers have been very concerned about that, because there are concerns that they would be stuck in this arrangement, perhaps indefinitely, if, for example, negotiations between the EU and UK break down over their future relationship. Then the UK would remain in the customs union, as would Northern Ireland, of course, and that would mean that the UK would not be able to sign off on trade deals with other countries, which is one of the main things things that a lot of people voting for Brexit were hoping would take place. So that has been really the main sticking point, and the UK Prime Minister has tried to find assurances on that, but a very, very difficult topic to convince many of her hardline Brexiteers on.
Well, Natalie, I can tell that it's quite cold out there in London, but the politics certainly very hot at this particular moment, and it seems you have a long night ahead of you. That's Natalie Powell for ENCA.